So let's give 1 more minute to make sure everybody gets on board, and then we're going to start. Hello and welcome one more time. We are 1 minute over, so in about 45 seconds, we're going to start class today. It's going to be an interesting one. In the meantime, let's get the music going. Okay, so it's time for us to get started. One more time, welcome. My name is Vitus Zekeze. You can call me DK, you can call me whatever you want. Fine. Today we're going to start our IT sessions, okay? So first things first, I know you must have received the flyer and everything. Let me jump in there and share with you the schedule that we have so far. And we have more people joining in. And I'll probably mute everyone, that way, you know, everything is all quiet and smooth sailing. But if you have a question, jump in at any time with your question and we'll carry on. So a quick recap of the schedule. We're going to be starting today, obviously, with an introduction. Following the introduction, we're going to talk about you know, different parts of computer science, IT, and information systems that usually get confused. And next week, it's mostly going to be you guys talking. So it's mostly going to be you having questions for me. So I'm going to explain in general IT career paths, and then you can come in with your questions. For instance, if you're interested in one career or another, and then we can talk about it clearly. Okay? Does that sound good?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and then following that, we're going to go on.
Yes, it does.
Awesome. Following that, we're going to go on with, on the 2nd of July, we're going to start on with hardware and software, because those are the basic building blocks of computers. Okay, whatever you have on a computer is either hardware or software. And from then, we'll also talk about a few different types and so on and so forth. The next week, 9th of July, we'll talk about the internet and the web. When I talk about the web, I mean the World Wide Web. So there's a very big difference between the two. We're going to clarify that and also talk about web development, the tools, the ingredients that you need to be able to build websites. And if that's a career path you like to pursue, we can talk more about that as well. Thereafter, we're going to talk about cybersecurity. Now, we're not going to have a full course on cybersecurity. We're just going to talk about the fundamentals to get you started. Security is imperative. Security is the most important when it comes to IT, not just IT, in our lives. When you have your money, you put it in your bag, you lock up your bag. When you leave your house, you lock up your house. Everything has to do with security. If you're driving a car, when you park the car, you have to lock up the car. So the same thing goes with IT and computer science. You know, if you have data, you have to secure that data. You want to make sure it's available. You want to also make sure that it's true data, that someone does not come in and change it and you have wrong data. So we'll talk about those basic things. Next, we'll talk about databases. Everything is built on data, whether it's Facebook or it's Instagram or if it's your life, everything is built on data. So we have to go in and make sure that we talk about data, database administration, database developers, database creation. So once you talk about all those different types of concepts in databases, you have a better idea if that's a career you want to pursue, you know, and the level of difficulty, if that's something you're interested in. After we talk about databases, we'll definitely talk about cloud computing. This is a sweet spot for many people, okay? Some people always say, go ahead and learn about AWS. AWS is just one part of cloud computing. AWS is Amazon Web Services. You also have Azure, which is for Microsoft. And not to belittle anybody, Google also have one, which is GCP, Google Cloud Computing, or Google Cloud Platform. So we have to talk about them in general terms. And then we're going to focus on one or two things that are common amongst all of them. That would be the end of July. We'll carry on August 6th to talk about software programming. Okay, this might be a sweet spot for me because people look at me more as a developer. But software programming, remember, we're going to talk about hardware and software. We need to be able to program the parts of a computer. So software programming will probably have to do a lot with coding. And again, there are so many different types of coding languages, just like there are so many different types of spoken languages in the world. So if you want to communicate in France, you have to know French. If you want to communicate in Spain, you have to know Spanish. Likewise, if you're going to build a mobile device or mobile application, you need to be able to learn a particular type of programming language. If you're going to be communicating with data, then you have to use a different type of programming language. So we'll talk about the different types of programming languages and also talk about similarities, differences, and so on and so forth, level of difficulty. Next up, we'll talk about mobile power on the go. Everybody has a mobile device, not just a mobile device, smartphone or a tablet or a laptop, okay? Those things are very powerful. You don't only have to use your smartphone to get on WhatsApp and Snapchat and Facebook, but you can do it. You can use it to really utilize most of its power in your everyday life. Okay, whatever it is you forget, you can use it as a reminder tool. You can use it to also build your business, which is what we'll talk about the following week. Because the following week, we're going to talk about BizTech, how you can get things done with IT, okay, to actually make your business go faster, better, more efficient, quicker, and even cheaper, okay? So at almost the end of August, we'll talk about Microsoft Office. Microsoft is one of the companies that we'll talk about today. So we'll talk about the different types of products they have, their applications, and there are a lot of them. Everybody knows about Word, Excel, and so on. They also have operating systems and so on. So we'll talk about them, big picture, what is common amongst them, what you use for what, and how you can leverage it in your program. And again, I talked about Excel. This looks a lot like Excel, but this is part of the Google Suite apps. Google has a lot of different applications that it uses. So we'll talk about them, how we can utilize them, and how we can leverage them for our own good. Now, the last 3 days, I have TBD. So that's going to be based on what your demand is, what you really like to learn. If you want us to take 1 or 2 of these and go in depth, we can do that. If you want us to go into something that totally different, we can also do that. So it's based on the demand, and we will definitely get to that reach, or rather we'll definitely cross that reach when we get there. So enough talking from my end. Are you guys having any questions so far that you'd like me to address?
For now, no question. Everything is clearly explained.
Okay. Welcome, Guacom, and welcome, Zoom. I think we also lost Tim out there, but yeah, definitely, again, like I said, we're always going to start on time. And just as a reminder, all our sessions are being recorded, okay? So if for one reason or another, you step away, I'm going to send you guys a copy of the recording so that you can follow up with it. Sounds good?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
All right.
yes, yes.
No questions. Let's dive into today's material. So let me switch screens a little bit here. So we just got done talking about the schedule. Next, let's talk about the outline for what we're going to discuss today, okay? So today, my goal is to make sure that we are able at the end of the day to define what IT is and also define what information systems is. We also want to be able to define what computer science is, okay? So IT, IS, and CS. Not just define them, we also want to be able to differentiate them. It's very easy to get them confused, but trust me, I'm going to make it very easy for you to remember the differences today so that you don't have to think about it. Later on, we'll talk about a few IT, or should I say technology companies, okay? I believe the best way for us to get an introduction to look at the history of computer science, of what we're trying to do, is to look at these companies across the board. So we'll talk about the history, how they all started. And then we're going to move ahead and talk about the future. What are some of the companies that we think are going to carry on in a different way? So let me go ahead and dive into our classroom material. Should I change that? Okay. So I did create a classroom for you. At the end of this class, I will probably request for your email. Once you give me your email, I'm going to add you to this classroom, a Google Classroom. The classroom has all the materials that we're going to use, and it's going to be available to you no matter when, no matter where you are, and so on. So we just started with the first session, session 0. We looked at the schedule. Next, we're going to go on to session 1, which is today's material. And we've opened the file that I'm actually using to show you. So you have access to all of this, okay? So hopefully I should be able to cover this information in, let's say the first few, I should be able to get them in 15 minutes and then get a quick break, see if you have any questions concerning that. And then I'm going to go ahead and try my best to use another 30 minutes to cover those big companies. It's first of all, impossible to talk about each one of those companies in 30 minutes, but I'm going to try to squeeze in the time to make sure that we can just capture the key things. So that at the end of the day, we can use about 45 minutes for the lecture, and then we have questions and answers. The key here is that I don't want to go over 2 hours. If we go over 2 hours, we are overkilling it. And we're just going to chip in bit by bit. The little you learn today, you retain it, you utilize it, exercise it. Next week, we're going to do the same thing, and so on and so forth. Sounds good?
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Yes,
So
sir.
let me
Sounds good.
go back to Google Sheets. So
I just came in. Thank you.
yes, welcome, Mr. Celestine. So we've talked about the schedule, right? Next up would be, I should move this to the side. Next up would be the flyer. Everybody has a copy of the flyer. So you have my contact information. Reach out to me if you have any questions, interrupt me if you need to, and then we'll go from there. Next week, I'm going to get a different flyer that's also going to have a synopsis of what we're going to cover. But like I said, we'll cover IT, IS, CS, and FAMGA, okay? And another copy of the flyer just for diversity. Now, what is computer science? What is IT? And what is IS? There is a major difference between what IT and computer science is. IT is like a toolbox, the tools that you need to be able to use IS, or should I say computer science. Computer science is learning about the theory of how computers work and also learning how to do it. So the professionals in this industry do a lot of independent work and build computers per se. So again, computer theory is what you're going to study, computing problems, how to design software, hardware, using math and science. So they learn both theory and then practicals. For IT, there are more technological information and computing systems that are being learned. So they're learning about the tools that have been built by these guys in computer science. If you look at it, a big picture, The way I look at it is, take an example of a car, right? The guy that's manufacturing the car is more like the computer science and the computer. The mechanic is also part of computer science and the computer. But then when you have the driver, the person that's driving the car, the one that's using the tool that was built, that's the IT part of it. So computer science is more or less a subset of information technology. When you compare now information technology and information systems, this is also a relationship that has to do with subset and superset. IT is how you study, design, and implement management of data and information. Information, you take data, you change it into information using technology. So technology are the tools that you use. Information systems includes IT, the people, and the process. Okay, not just one. So again, let's take a better look. On the bottom right, information technology has to do with that hardware and software that makes up the computer and how it's being used to facilitate a business and its activities. But information systems includes the people that interact in the business and the business processes. Is it a financial institution? Is it a sporting institution? Is it an educational institution? And so on and so forth. So it encompasses all three of them. Okay. So these are the different things that you get to do in IT. Communication, you're going to study that, data processing and how it associates with business needs. And then obviously using hardware and software, which is focused on computer science. That would be operating systems, databases, networks, and so on, servers, and so on and so forth. But then computer science on its own, you learn how to compute, how to solve problems, how to find algorithms, and it could be in different areas, in distributed systems, in networks, in computer theory, in data science, or in artificial intelligence. Okay, so hopefully that actually explains the difference between computer science, information technology, and information systems. All right, so what questions do you have so far? So everything is very clear. Mr. Celestine, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, everything is clear.
Okay, so is this something that everybody was aware of before, or is that something new that you learned?
Excuse me, maybe, I don't know if my kids are following it, if my kids understand it. Those are my kids there with the name, screen name, Joe. That's Celestine Jr. and Joe Mary Sophie. I don't know if they understand the difference between computer science and IT.
So do you guys understand?
Junior, did you understand? Maybe you can brush it up for us in more simpler terms.
Okay, in more simpler terms, right? Let's take a car, for example. If you have a car and you compare a car and a computer, the guy that's making that car and the guy that's fixing that car needs to learn computer science, okay? So that would be the mechanical engineers, the mechanics that fix the car and so on. But now the person that's using the car that has been fixed, the driver, or maybe the motorboy and so on and so forth, those are the people that are learning IT. So you don't want to create the computer stuff. You don't want to create the hardware. You don't want to create the software. You want to use it. Use it in addition with the information. So information and the technology, you join it together to learn IT, okay? Now, when you talk of information systems, you're putting more things in there. For instance, you start thinking of the road infrastructure. You start thinking about the police and the control that have to do with the use of the car, everything that you use the car, the different processes that the car has to go through, the guy that has to wash the car, at the lavery and so on. So now you're looking at information systems. So IT is part of information systems and computer science is part of IT. Does it make better sense now?
I think so.
The computer science is part of IT.
Yes, computer science is a subset of IT.
Okay.
But computer science has to do with just the computer, the hardware, the software, and the network, and so on. But IT, you have to think about information. You use the information tool in there.
Okay.
All right. So let's carry on to the next slide. Okay, we talked about FAMGA. FAMGA is a derivative of what is known as FANG. FANG stands for Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. These are this used to be the 5 biggest IT companies around 2013, okay? When you look at these companies, Facebook was social media. They started it in 2004. You know, at that point in time, it was still growing when it started. You know, Amazon is online shopping, okay? It started in 1994. Obviously, it did not start in 1994 that way. It has evolved quite a bit. Apple is in computing. Apple started in 1976, one of the oldest amongst all of them on this slide. Netflix is a streaming media production company which started in 1997. And Google is, one second, let me make sure. Google, again, is an internet technology company, started in 1998. Okay. So this gives us an idea of the different companies. Now, FANG actually changed from 2013, and now we have FAMGA. FAMGA, again, these are just acronyms for us to remember the top 5 companies in, in terms of their valuation, how you value them, okay? So Facebook is currently at number 5 position, and this is as of 2022, okay? They have lost about 21% of their value over 1 year. That's why they dropped that much. Again, this has to do with probably COVID-19 and other issues, okay? Amazon is number 4. Amazon has actually gained 40%. And why it has gained that much, again, has to do with COVID too, because it uses Amazon Web Services, which is cloud computing. So there are more people working from home. People are trying to utilize, web services rather than face-to-face communication. Microsoft is at the 3rd position. They've gained 30%. Again, Microsoft has software that is being used, many types of software, obviously, that are being used by people that are working remotely, working from home. Google, again, also gained 24%. And you can see the different brand value and brand revenue. Okay, Google is also traded as Alphabet. That's the name that is known in the trading stock exchange market. So Google, again, some cases you see Google, some cases you see Alphabet. Okay, just like Facebook. Facebook now is being known as Meta because of the metaverse. But on all of them, the top one is Apple. Apple has been consistent. And again, Apple has been changing its model and also making moves. So they are at the top spot. Now let's check out the next slide. Mama is what it's currently known as. Okay, FAMGA is changing to Mama because Facebook is now known as Meta. Apple is always going to be Apple. Microsoft will always be Microsoft, hopefully. Amazon has always been there. And Alphabet is Google. Okay, does that make sense? Do we have any questions so far?
Yeah, it's okay.
All right, so next up, let's talk about how they have been changing. So way back in 2013, they were all about the same value. But if you see, I don't know if you can see this clearly, but Amazon has been rising gradually. It's a green color. Oh, sorry, Amazon is a blue color. That has been rising all the way up to that value. So if in 2013, you bought Amazon stock for $100, Right now, each one of that stock is worth $1,300. So those people that invested millions have multiplied their millions by 10 times. Okay. So again, that's an example. Netflix used to be there, but Netflix has dropped drastically. So now it's just Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft. And they are all part of what is known as the S&P index, which is all the way at the top here. So all of these make about 70%, I believe, of, no, sorry, this is S&P index, which again, depends on those that were confident enough to bet on that, okay? So take a look at all the different brands that we have right now. I think this was probably as of 2019. All the different brands and all the different sectors. The red color is alcohol. That will be Budweiser, Corona, and Heineken, okay? The purple color is telecommunication. You see Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T. But obviously you can see there's a lot of them in IT, okay? So that's the technology color. Technology, you have everything from Dell, PayPal, HP, Sony, Samsung, eBay, SAP, Facebook, Apple, Cisco, Netflix, Intel, Oracle, and so on and so forth, okay? So that tells you IT is the way to go. You want to get in early. You don't want to wait for others to go ahead of you, okay? So that said, let's jump into the next part. All right, so we talked about IT, IS, and computer science and the major differences. We'll be talking about IT careers later next week. And to get a little bit of a timeline on these companies and the FAMGA companies per se. Again, let's take a quick look at the history to see that should help us in our own history and entry into IT. So in 1975, probably older than most of us, Microsoft was formed. Then a year after that, on April 1st, three guys came together: Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Wayne Ronald. They came together and decided that instead of going to buy computers and getting somebody assemble it for you, they are going to buy all the parts and assemble it themselves, okay? So they made a deal with this guy, Amos Clifford, that they were going to provide him with 30 computers. They went ahead and built those computers and sold them as Apple One. So, a few weeks later, Ronald, he dropped out because he was a family man. He thought that was too risky of a business to get into. Today, he's the one missing out. So, moral of the story, if you really want to do something, you really have to do it. You need to be able to convince anyone that's standing in your way that that is the way to go. Convince your family, convince your brother, convince your friend, and so on and so forth. So the history of Apple has grown tremendously. Okay, from 1976, Steve Jobs was fired in 1985, around in this area. And then he returned. Where am I? Let's go down. He returned in 1997, just about after we had Google created. Then he actually did a wonderful presentation in 2001, which everybody remembers. Later on, he was succeeded by Tim Cook, and that's the moral of the story. It continues. They're now number one in IT, number one in everything when it comes to valuation of companies. 18 years later, fast forward, Amazon was born. Amazon started in the garage of Jeff Bezos. It's a whole story and so on that has to do with that. But again, he had nothing. He was in New York learning, and he realized that there was something called an internet, or should I say World Wide Web. The World Wide Web started around 1989. 5 years later, he realized it was growing at a pace of 2,300%. So he said, you know what? I'm going to create a business to be selling stuff online. He had just 5 products that he was selling: compact disc, tech stuff and think TVs and books was one of his least favorite. But then he realized that books were catchy. Everybody wanted to buy books because they had no single place where they could afford a list of books. So he finally focused on books. What was the least important was finally what was most important for him. You know, he made a lot of losses. He lost a lot of money from 1994 all the way to around 2001. And he had to find ways around, you know, around the system to make it work, because he had to buy 10 books from his wholesale producers each time. But then if somebody wants just one book, why would he order 10 books? But he found a way in the system that works for him, because there was one book that was out of stock. So if he wanted one book, he would order one book and 9 of those books that were out of stock. That way he could get his money's reward. But his goal was to sell as much as possible, not necessarily if he's gaining. Sometimes when we buy stuff on Amazon, he's actually losing money because of free shipping and so on and so forth. So there's more we can talk about that story, but let's move on. Google was then created 2 years later, mistakenly, actually, because these two guys, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, were working on their dissertation. Okay, they had a project that was to check, is it true that search engines give you results based on the number of links that you have to other pages? They built an algorithm, okay, that was straight up computer science to do that. And then they realized, you know what, let's use this algorithm and instead build our own search engine. So they initially called that project Backup, but later they changed it quickly to Google. And Google was a play of words in a mathematical symbol. But the moral of the story, you may be trying to do something. They were not doing that because they wanted to make money. All they needed was to complete their project. But then project was completed, whether they failed or they passed it, they realized, let's just make this thing better, because it looks like these guys, their search engines are not doing it correctly. So they built their search engine and everything else followed after that. Gmail came to, you know, and so on and so forth. Even now they have a Google phone, okay? So the story again is one of those wonderful stories, how people start from nowhere and then they finally get somewhere that they'll never have thought about. Now, fast forward to another 18 years. We get to 2004, Facebook is born. Okay, everybody knows Facebook, everybody knows this guy, Mark Zuckerberg. How did it happen? He was a student at Stanford. Him, along with a few more friends, Eduardo, Dustin, and Chris, they decided that they were going to make a software or a website that was going to make sure it shows faces of people on campus, and you can choose who you want to be your friend. Because they realized, hey, whatever you needed, you can buy online, you can buy TV online, you can buy books online, because obviously Amazon was there already, but you could not really make friends online. So that was a problem that they were trying to address. They were not doing it to make money. They did it the wrong way though, because they actually hacked into the system and downloaded every student's picture. Somehow they were not fired from school, or they were not kicked out from school. They actually used that. And when it was terminated, they told them, you cannot do this because you're violating rules of school to be getting people's pictures and putting it on your website. They took it out of school. The first one was called the Facebook. Okay, it started as FaceMash, and then they bought the URL, the Facebook. And finally, they took it outside, spent their money, bought servers, and were able to connect 4 different schools. Those 4 different schools were the first to start using Facebook. Overnight, there were so many people that were joining. They ended up saying, you know what, let's open this to the public. That's how Facebook started. Today, Facebook owns WhatsApp, Facebook owns Instagram, Facebook owns almost every social media that's popular out there. So moral of the story is, make sure you know the kind of people you're hanging out with. Hang out with people that can bring out the best in you. And don't let anybody put you down. You're not going to be building Facebook tomorrow. It's going to be a work in progress. But see how much these guys have endured. Amazon has got all kinds of problems that they have solved forever and ever. even the president or the former president of the US actually accused Jeff Bezos that he brought the United States Postal Service out of business because he gave free shipping for anyone that's buying from Amazon. So don't worry about anybody that's accusing you and pointing fingers. Focus on your goal and make sure that you use IT for the best that you can. Okay, does that make sense? What questions do we have before I go into each of their histories in depth? So I know I had to run through all of that.
What are you going to ask?
No questions?
Wow, it's so interesting.
Okay, so since you guys don't have any questions, I guess I'm going to ask you questions. Did anybody learn anything new so far that you'd like to share with me?
Yes, I've never heard of the history behind all these software programs, Microsoft, Google, Gmail, Facebook. So it's my first time getting the history and the date they were created.
Yes, there's a lot of things that are still continuing, you know, but you have to be able to, as much as we sit down and criticize these guys, oh, Facebook could have done this, could have done that, Microsoft could have done this, could have done, those guys have gone through a lot of hell, okay? Most of them started, I'm going to show you some videos that would teach you or that will show you how they went to, you know, they gave up everything in their lives, you know, gave up friends, gave up family to be able to do what they love. And then everybody is still insulting them, but they don't care. They still get things done. You know, Microsoft was so big. I mean, him and his wife, Melissa and Melinda Gates, I mean, they have a big foundation that they're just giving away stuff, giving away software, giving away money. But that's because the goal is try to find a problem that you are the only one that can solve it. Solve it to the best of your knowledge. Solve it to the best of your ability. And then everything else will come to you. That's what happened to Mark. Mark was trying to solve a problem about people making friends on campus. Then it became, you know, wonderful idea. He moved it out to other 4 campuses. And then you have business people approach you and say, you know what, let's market this your idea. The same with Google. They were trying to make sure that people were able to use the best kind of search engine. And then it became a marketable idea. Amazon, he has one of the most critical stories, I think, amongst all of them. Even Apple, Steve Jobs has gone through, I mean, he was fired from his company, but then he came back and took the company to higher heights because they thought his ideas were very not good. You know, even Amazon, if you go to Google and type in relentless, you cannot give up. Relentless was a company that Amazon wanted to be called. If you type relentless.com, it's going to take you straight to Amazon. They still own the domain name because Amazon before was supposed to be called Cadabra, like abracadabra. But when he called his lawyer to register the name, the lawyer had cadaver. So instead of it being, I should use this. Oh, no. Let me get another one. So there's Amazon. So Amazon was supposed to be called Cadabra, but what the lawyer heard was cadaver, which means a corpse. So he told him that idea was not a good idea. You know, you should change it to another name. So he then changed it to Relentless. His friends told him that name does not sound very good. It's like a spiffy, you know, some kind of childish name, you know, feels like you're too much. Finally, he got the name Amazon because Amazon was the biggest, or Amazon is the biggest river. You know, that's why he was called Amazon. If you look for the Amazon, the first logo of Amazon, it's a logo with A and a river that's going through it. So Amazon's first logo will look just like this. That's a river that's going to letter A. So, I mean, things always change. One thing that you notice is the change. But then let's go back to Facebook. Let's start with Facebook. Facebook, again, started in 2004, okay? It was then called The Face. It was founded by these 4 students we talked about. But then they launched their famous wall, you know, posting on people's wall on Facebook in 2004. By 2007, Facebook was able to share videos. And then 2008, videos were then shared on Facebook on iPhones. If you look at the history, it's enormous. Change, 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 change. All of this did not happen overnight. 2010 was when they created groups. Now, nobody even cares about groups. Groups are like something too old. And then you could start making video calls using Facebook in 2011. You know, now you can even add your business in Facebook. By the time it was 2014, you know, you started having likes and so on, reactions when it was 2016, and so on and so forth. Marketplace was 2016, and that was barely 6 years ago. So there have been lots and lots of changes that has been going on. But also Facebook has been buying other companies, okay? Facebook has bought so many companies that if you look at the amount of things that are going on now, Instagram has about 300 million users. Facebook itself has over 1.5 billion users. We all use WhatsApp all the time. We communicate on WhatsApp every single time. WhatsApp is owned by Facebook. If you look at all the different companies that they have acquired, they acquired the Control Labs. They also acquired in 2014 quite a good number of companies: Oculus, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Atlas. Okay. So again, things are always going to change. You have to be able to adapt to change to make sure that your model is going to survive. We talked about Amazon. He was one of the ones that had a rough time. You know, this is just a short summary of what he's gone through. We can watch a 3-minute video, a 10-minute video, a 15-minute video of that. So actually, let me go ahead and play this 3-minute video. Let's watch it real quickly and capture what he said. Hopefully we don't get a commercial, which I believe is going to come up immediately first.
$1,200, $5,000,
Okay, let's make that.
and this one is $3,000 every single month.
All right, let's watch together.
The story of Amazon.com is a perplexing one. On the one hand, it has killed the scores of bookstores, threatened almost all sector of small business retail, gotten its hands into everything from logistics to music to cloud service, and is not stopping there. People have fallen in love with the idea of the low prices that the Amazon company has to offer, along with the 2-day free shipments. With the arrival of Amazon Prime, they are delivering the products on the very same day, and movies and other sources of entertainment. Back in 1994, a 30-year-old school pass-out named Jeff Bezos was working at Dashaw, a prominent head. One day he found out a said that stated that the internet was growing at 2,300% a year. We are here talking about the time where the internet was used by the government and academics, but then he realized a game-changing business. He started with a list of 20 potential products that could be delivered and then finally landed on the books. This is so because he thought the internet has a big advantage on the mail-order catalogs, that is, it is possible to list all the books on the internet, rather creating a book that contains a list of books that is available. With the similar mindset, he founded Amazon.com in Bellevue, Washington in his garage, giving the business a 30% chance of the success. The company officially made it to the markets in 1995, and the very first book sold was Douglas Hofstadter's Fluid Concepts and Creative. This made clear the intent of the company to make everything available on the internet. In 1997, on the 15th of May, the company debuted on NASDAQ, going public at $18 per share. They believed the company will incur substantial operating losses for the foreseeable future. It made its very first profit in the year of 2001, that was $5 million. They then knew their hard work, and the standout idea has now survived and was ready to take off. The company never focused on making profits but sales. In 2013, they made money less than they had made in the last 5 years, but the fact to note was that it had tripled the sales. People called it a foolish move, but the company believed in growing big. The smartest move that Amazon made was in 2005 when they launched the Amazon Prime, where they guaranteed a 2-day free shipping in 48 states and charged just $79 a year. It forced the people to go all in. They also launched the Fulfilled by Amazon, wherein the third parties used the Amazon's huge infrastructure to make and sell the products. This was one of the moves that made Amazon go from just an online company to a verified platform. It was a smart game of chess that Amazon played with the retail stores and eliminated them one by one. In 2007, they launched Amazon Kindle, and the 3 years to the launch, Kind book sales touched skyrockets and overtook hardcover book sales. They launched the It's B2B business. It was simple storage service they were providing at affordable rates, along with other services that have now evolved to a cloud computing giant AWS or Amazon Web Services. In the 2010, they began with the multimedia services as they launched the Amazon Prime Music and the video. 2014 marked the launch of Amazon Echo and Alexa that changed the company's ecosystem. It was the very first voice assistant that was responsive and well received. If you liked our video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to get great content regularly.
So that gives you an idea of how they changed. Amazon tried and failed in many things. They had Amazon Fire, which was a cell phone. They trashed that because it didn't work. But now they tried the Kindle. All books were hard copy. They started making books in soft copy. People can read books on their cell phones, on their Kindle devices, and that was what skyrocketed. But then we are all talking about cloud computing today. Amazon in 2006 is when they established Amazon Web Services. So it has been a tough call over and over. Now you have Amazon Echo. Wherever you go in the developed world and you say Alexa, you always get a response. But that's because of how they worked hard starting from 1994 up till today. Now they were able to make 140,000 people who sell on Amazon to make more than 100,000 in sales. So again, it's not a simple issue to, get quick turnaround. It's a work in progress. Slowly but surely, you get to a stage that you'll be, autopilot and everything will go smoothly. Microsoft, again, is another story. Their story is so long, we can't even talk about it in 30 minutes, but they have their hands in everything. If you look at the different products of Microsoft, you'd see that it ranges from software, hardware, all different types of things. But the one thing that is very prominent is the operating system. Today in the world, 80 to 90% of all computers are using Microsoft Windows. Just a handful of them are still using Apple. But then if you look at the breakdown, the different hardware that you have from Microsoft, they made the Xbox. They have the Zune that is no longer being made. They have Microsoft Surface, the laptop. They make all of this by themselves. They have Azure, which is a cloud computing. Some of them, they bought them. Some of them, they made them in-house. If you look at the Microsoft Office, they have all tons of applications: Microsoft Word, Forms, Teams, SharePoint, Outlook, Excel, Access, and so on. Now, if you look at the web, they also have a search engine called Bing. Microsoft actually owns LinkedIn. Microsoft 360, Skype is owned by Microsoft, and so on and so forth. They also have subscription services where people have to pay annually or monthly. Okay. When we talk about maintenance, they have antivirus, they have security essentials, and so on. Video games, their hand is in there. But the big one is the operating systems. They have Windows operating systems that they created along the years. Right now, everybody is still using Windows 11. It's Windows 10, Windows 8, Windows 7, Windows Vista, all the way down to Windows 1.0, which was the very first Windows in 1985. They build servers that are used by all these big companies out there. And that's where they probably make the bulk of their money from. Right now, they got themselves out of the phone business because they tried out Windows Phone, it didn't work out. The phone business has been a tricky one because Microsoft has tried it, it didn't work. Amazon has tried it, it hasn't worked for them. Google is still in it right now, Google Phone. But it's probably something that's best for Samsung and those other companies that are more versed with creating devices, mobile devices. So you can see how diverse Microsoft has been. That's been one of the things that has been holding it together. Okay. Apple also has a very sweet story. They've come a very, very long way from 1975. I think they probably have one of the most inspiring stories, and we're about 10 minutes to 1 o'clock, 10 minutes to 1 hour together. I think this would be a good time for us to watch this video and try to appreciate what these guys went through when they were creating Apple. And hopefully we don't get another commercial. If we do, let me mute it. So what questions do we have? Any questions, anybody, before we proceed? You may be asking your question, but you're on mute. You probably have to unmute yourself. And welcome, Mr. Pierrot.
Hey, Pa.
Any questions from your end? I know you missed the first part, but again, like I said, all of this will be recorded and then we'll make it available to everybody.
No
It's
question.
not a question.
Okay, someone had a question, go ahead.
Yes, my question is that if after the 18 years, why do we say that Facebook in 2004 was created by Mark Zuckerberg? Why they're saying that he was associated by Eduardo Sirin, Marco Z and X? I'm not really understanding why.
Okay, so what happened was that, again, these were friends at school, right? So Facebook was founded, it was Mark that actually wrote the code. He wrote the code and he collaborated. Normally, it's usually teamwork when it comes to computer science or IT or information systems. You could probably write something and then you give your friend to test it, or you could write one feature and your friend writes another feature and then you merge it together to be able to make one wonderful software. Just like if we're going to go together and say, let's make a car, I'll probably be working on the tires, you're working on the engine, somebody else is working on the steering, and someone is working on the cabin. So it was more or less teamwork. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Again, it will make sense when we watch this video because it's very similar to Apple. Apple, you had three guys that came together: Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ron Wayne. Steve Wozniak, they normally call him Woz, and then they always call Steve Jobs Steve. But the third guy, Ron, he said, guys, I don't want to be part of it. This thing is not going to work. I'm going to stay back and enjoy my time with my family. Today, nobody's talking about him. Everybody is talking about Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. So it's up to you how you want to, check on what risk you want to take and what risk you don't want to take. Sounds good? All right, let's get in and listen to the history of Apple.
Of course, I'll never forget the day that I was down at the first professional engineering symposium of my life. And all of a sudden somebody comes out and they go over to the mic and they say, would Paul Terrell please go over to the door? So I get up and walk over the door and they say, you've got an emergency telephone call. You've got to go answer this phone, So I go over to the telephone and I get on there and it's Kramer Electronics. And the guy says, I just had a couple of guys in here. He says, I don't believe this. He said they were in here to buy parts to build a computer and they had a written purchase order from you for 50 Apple I computers. And these guys have convinced me that if I sell them the parts and give them 30-day terms, that they will build these boards up, they will deliver them to you, you will pay them COD. I thought, hey, that's the deal. God only knows where he built it. He showed up on the doorstep on the day with the parts.
Remember how we started? quite so long ago.
I wanted a computer my whole life. That was my big thing in life. But I could never get even near enough to actually toggle the switches and put my own program in. And all of a sudden, I just realized, hey, microprocessors, all of a sudden, it's affordable. I can actually build my own. And Steve went a little further. Steve saw it more as, a product that you can actually deliver, sell, and someone else can use. I remember driving down Highway 85. We're on the freeway, and Steve mentions, I got a name, Apple Computer. We kept trying to think of other alternatives to that name, but we couldn't think of anything better. And also, remember, I'd worked at Atari, and it got us ahead of Atari in the phone book.
So this is what a computer looks like.
Remember, an Apple I was not particularly usable for too much, but it was so incredible to be able to have your own computer. It sort of said, when you buy a computer, you don't want a bunch of switches and lights to toggle stuff in binary. You want a keyboard to start typing, and you want a video display to display all the characters. It was sort of an embarkation point from the way computers have been going in these big steel boxes with switches and lights to a completely assembled computer on a single board that you could be using within a few hours after buying it. Still, the audience had to connect it to their own video monitor, connect their own keyboard. Oh yeah, some people put them in these beautiful walnut cases, and some people put them in big metal boxes, and some people didn't put them in any boxes at all. And then having the club as a socializing gathering was a good way to show off. And I would hold the PC board up in the air and answer a few questions. And some of the questions, what do you plan to add to it? One of the things I thought about was color. A simple technique for generating color based upon just studying TV when I was in high school. I'm always thinking, how do you reduce the number of components? And I came up with a much more optimal design that was half the components and twice the power. Plus it had color, paddles, sound, and all that. That was the Apple II. Every few days, Woz would, say, God, I've made an incredible breakthrough. I've saved a few chips here and there. And I remember this iterative process of watching him get to this incredible stage, but then figure out a way to take another few parts out and add 3 more features. And it kept getting better and better and better. And it was like polishing.
I'm leaving. We'll join next week.
But then you just polished it and polished it, and it got better and better and better and better and tighter and tighter. And it ended up, of course, being legendary. Our dream was to have a computer in a plastic case, sort of as a statement against those big metal boxes. And then Jerry Manick was the person that designed the Apple II case. From the time I met Jerry Manick to the time we had final drawings was 3 weeks. So we didn't try a lot of things. We just did what we thought would be great. And I think, if you look at an Apple II today, it still looks good. And that's not something that most products can say almost 10 years after their introduction.
We started small. We started with nothing. 2 guys and $1,300. And because of that, we've had to depend very heavily on other people, the users, the dealers. And so we established a much better relationship with our dealers and our customers.
And the dealers loved the Apple II. I mean, the dealers from the very beginning loved it because they could just sell this one box for the first time. They didn't remember the early dealers used to have people in the back rooms assembling the kits for people that didn't want to assemble them themselves. And it was sort of a real hobby hangout. I had this retail store in 1975. We opened the bike shop, officially opened the doors. I remember Steve one day came by and said, this is insane. You have to build these things. Somebody should make an assembled computer, and this thing would just grow so much faster.
We've helped create an entrepreneurial computer program. You can sit at home, write a program, and hope to make $1 million off it, just the way a rock star could hope to cut a tape, make a record, make $1 million off that.
I remember the first day this real tall guy named Dan Filestra was walking through Banley 1, which was the only building we had at that time, and with this diskette saying, "This is going to be a revolution," So what's that? He said, we haven't got a name for it, but it's sort of a way to put rows and columns of numbers together. It's sort of like a visible calculator, and that was what he was calling it at that time. And it would only work on one computer, the Apple II, because it was the only one of those personal computers that had enough memory. That was the first time that software sold hardware. So it was like the extra capability that existed in our product really made a lot of things possible for Apple and put Apple into the leading position.
If you buy an Apple, you can get almost any type
a program you want, regardless of what you want to do. There's games. There's hundreds of games. There's probably a dozen word processors, probably a dozen databases. It showed up in third world countries. It showed up at Standard Oil running your offshore oil platforms. It showed up in schools.
You turn a 6-year-old loose with logo, and before you know it, by the time they're in the second grade, they understand variables and many-sided polygons and the relationship between polygons and circles. And the curriculum says they aren't supposed to know that until they're in the 8th grade.
There's just been a lot of people who've spent uncountable, enjoyable hours discovering, all about computers and all about themselves, messing around with an Apple II. Every single step of the way, we knew that we were the leader. We knew why. We knew why this product was the best one. It was totally obvious. We upgraded the system from sets to floppies, from integer basic to floating point basic to lowercase. So we went through many of those improvements, and we always had to remember a huge body of prior customers that were so important. We really care about the people that buy our products. We care about those people out there. Ever since the beginning, we sort of considered them, part of the Apple family.
And then we saw, the same kind of resurgence, just an incremental kick when the 2.8 came out, because there was a real pent-up demand. It was obvious there was a pent-up demand for a better Apple II.
It provides more solutions for more people in terms of software and hardware put together to do a job than any computer in history. In history.
We shipped more Apple IIs in the first 4 years than all the computers ever in the history of man that had ever been shipped.
There's a lot of resurgence of interest in the two. And what's really interesting is you read more and more articles and you see more and more quotes about the Apple II lasting forever.
I think it all just stems from mostly Woz's perception of the universe, which is trying to make stuff really great and really simple.
It's so neat, it's so fun to see. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm just watching these guys, and you can just see those wheels spinning, and boy, they're going home working, and there's some good stuff that's going to happen.
I mean, it's everything from the first piece of machinery that brought computing to people to the sort of two kids in garage make good.
So that is the story of Apple. Two kids from a garage decided that they're going to be building computers, assembling it, and making the components smaller and smaller, but better and better, faster and faster. And then at the end of the day, they get a deal with IBM, get a deal with another company, and they were shipping more than they could ever do it. Always ameliorating, always improving. And then today, they are on top, the very, very top spot of the market, as I've shown you earlier. All right, so we've been able to cover, let's go back to our timeline. We've been able to cover a little bit about Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Google, and Facebook. Okay, what questions do we have so far? So I know it's getting later and later, but like we said, Facebook, the history, the acquisitions, Amazon, the problems that they had to deal with. Again, all of this information will be available to you. And Microsoft, the plethora of products that they have. Google, again, we talked about those two guys that what they've encountered. If you look at the interactive history, okay, Google was created in '96. And then, see, just by calling their word, my phone is going off. And then by 1998, they met with this guy that decided to market their business. The co-founder of Sun, he gave them 2 checks, which total of $100,000. That's the money that they used to move off campus. And this is the garage where they lived. Let's take a look at how they live.
So we're right between that house and this house. We're renting this half of the house. So this is our garage. So you nobody's in here, but we got ping pong table, computer. Go to the other side of the office is our hack room. Nobody's here right now. Computer's still on, of course. And we'll go to my office. Yeah, got my office. Get this. Got my two computers. There's Larry, CEO of Google. Say something, Larry. Hi.
Yes. Now the future money people and that's all.
That's how it all started, guys. That's how it started when they moved off campus. And there was one time one of them could not pay the electricity bill. Somebody had to borrow them money to be able to pay the electricity bill. So nothing good comes
that's,
easy.
That's why the test of my friend here. We not give me money.
That's how it all happened.
The show now. Now because it is so, God has prepared something for me.
Yeah, they were all in the garage. They started just like that in the garage, and then they moved to Palo Alto, and then people started in them. They started having investments. They moved up to get their own office, you know, and then from then they started advertising and so on and so forth. By 2001, okay, leadership starts taking shape. More people start buying into the idea. They start meeting more people, you know, getting Eric Schmidt, who would be the CEO, and so on and so forth. And then they had their own president, was Larry and Sergey. And I mean, from then on, someone that has experience in the corporate world was able to shape it. Next thing, Gmail is created. You know, so they just started simply as a search engine. From the search engine, it moves to Gmail. From Gmail, they go into NASDAQ publicly. And next thing you know, they start looking beyond internet. You know, they started with Google Earth. There was Google Earth in 2005 that was looking at 3D. That was before we ever had Google Maps and so on. They went into Android. You know, Android phones were being created. And then they started Google Talk. Google Talk, you could chat with your friends wherever you were. By 2006, you know, they created a great firewall. It launched in China, and then censorship and so on and so forth, search engines. And I mean, 4 years later, Google closed shop in China and then came back. Now they started to go into video mode. Google went into YouTube. All our videos, all our stuff on YouTube, Google owns it. You know, 2007, Google business ads starts going up. Now you start having ads all over the place. We had Google ads that everybody wants. Now they went say, you know what, we need to enhance our map. You know, put some cameras on cars to drive around and create that Google Street View, which everybody is using. So you want to see where you're going to. Google Maps takes shape. You know, by 2010, they created a Nexus cell phone. And so they've been releasing more phones and so on. Google Fiber then goes ultra high speed and so on and so forth. You know, now Schmidt, who used to be their CEO, finally quit. You know, he gives up, and then things started changing. But again, this is a whole long story, or as you keep saying, people start having, people start having stress and strain and so on. 2012, again, that's recent history. That's like 10 years ago. That's when they started having apps. Right now, they have over how many million, billion apps on the world. But they just started because they started mobile devices. You know, they started having face computers in 2013. And then Google got on TV with Chromecast. You just take the device and put it behind your phone, or sorry, behind your computer, and then you're able to cast from there. They started doing mobility. Google Nest is a big deal because you want to be able to check your temperature, set it, you can connect it with your phone and so on and so forth, okay? 2015, they got a new parent company. You know, with everything that has been changing, they get a new look. Now it doesn't have to be the big G, but all of this is like yesterday, you know? Now they have the device that I have at home, which I cannot call it because if I call it, it's gonna go off. Hey, Google, how are you doing? So there you go, it's gonna talk back to you. Pixel comes to focus. Pixel is a Google phone, a wonderful phone, and so on and so forth. So you can see the history of all these things. It didn't start easily. Those guys gave up a lot, you know, but today they are $1 million companies. If you look at how much money they're making, I mean, if you go and search for the top companies in the world on Forbes list, you'll see Google amongst them. Most valuable brands. If you look at the most valuable brands of, let's say, Forbes list, you would see the top 5 of them out of the 100 are all technology. What does that tell you? Tech is the way to go. That is where you want to focus. Okay. So you see number 1 is Apple, Google is number 2, Microsoft, and so on and so forth. What questions do you have right now? Any questions, comments? No questions? Anybody? If you're talking, you might have to unmute yourself because everybody is on mute. It's
Please, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, my question is that since I heard the name Eric Smith, I wanted to know who was he healing? Who was Eric Smith?
Okay, so what happened was that, let's go back to that. What happened was that Larry Page and his buddy were the 2 guys that were working together, right? Where are they? Larry Page and Sergey were working together. They were students. They had no money. You know, they were just doing their project. From there, this guy walks in. This is not Eric Smith, by the way. This was Andy. He's from Sun Microsystems, which is a company that produces Java programming. So he gives them some money that, hey, this is a good idea. You guys should carry on with it. So they went ahead and did that. You know, some other people like Jeff Bezos also gave them some money. You know, they invested in it. But then that's when they moved off campus to be able to do more because they needed more space. As you see the garage, they started buying servers and being able to host those servers and so on. Now, when they left from their small home, because the company was growing, they have 8 employees, 8 people could not be staying in that garage. That was in Menlo Park. Now they needed a real office, so they moved to Palo Alto in California. When they got there, that's when they realized they need to shape up their company and have a structure. In the company, the person that's the head of the company is known as a CEO, Chief Executive Officer. But none of them had experience. Remember, they were just coming from college. They don't know how a company works. So that's when they went in and got Eric Schmidt. This is Eric Schmidt. He then joined as a chairman, and he was named as Google CEO. So Sergey Brin and Larry Page were the presidents. They were the ones building all the software and, you know, coming up with all the innovative ideas. But Eric Schmidt was the one that was showing up as the CEO and managing all the other groups, because you have to do marketing, you have to do production, you have to also do all these different operations, you have to oversee IT. So that's what the CEO does. Does that answer your question?
Okay, yes, it's answered. Thank you.
Very good question. Very good question. Anybody else has another question? So going back to our objectives of the day, just wanted to touch base with you guys to make sure that everybody is comfortable. So are we all comfortable? We know now what IT is. So we know IT is.
Yes. Brett, I'll need a little bit and so for you to enlighten me on the differences between IT, information systems, and computer science.
Okay, so I know we talked about this earlier, but let's talk about it again. IT, let's start with computer science, okay? Computer science has to do with building of computer. The computer is made up of software and hardware. So the guys that build the software and the guys that build this hardware need to learn computer science. So with computer science, they build these tools. So think about a car. If you compare a car with a computer, the person that builds the car, the guy who is a computer scientist. The person that fixes the car, the mechanic, is also like a computer scientist. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so now you move a step higher. You have IT. IT is taking information and technology and using it to make a business succeed. So information, normally you collect data either by inputting it or hearing stories or watching videos. That's all data. There are different forms that you can get data in. When you get that data, you use the tools that these computer scientists have built, be it the software or the hardware. So that's why you see all these tools here. The person that does IT uses these tools to be able to help the business make business decisions, to be efficient, faster, cheaper, and so on and so forth. So computer science is like a subset of IT. Now you have information systems. So in this case, again, comparing it with a car, IT would be like the driver, the person that's using the car, but they necessarily don't know how to build it. The person that's building the car is a computer scientist. The person that's using the car is a IT information technologist. Now, information system has to do with all three of them. So information system is, oops, I think I need to go back to that screen. Not wrong screen. One second while I navigate back to, there you go. So information system would be everything that includes the car, the mechanic, and also the road, even the police people that are on the road. So it's the entire system. So if we take a look at the picture again that I showed you earlier, which you'll have a copy of all of these as well. The computer system has three, or information system has three main things. It has the IT part, which is the hardware and the software to facilitate the business. It also has the people. You have to be able to manage the people, their interactions, and so on. And finally, the process, the business process that's going on. So that is the entire system that takes place. Within the system, you have information technology, which is just one part. And within information technology, you have computer science, which is just one part. Does that make sense?
All right, thank you. It does.
Awesome. Okay, what other questions we have? Okay, we're almost at the end. I believe we're at the end. We've been running for, let's see, what time do we have here? It's about 1 hour, 20 minutes. We've been going on. I think it's a good time for us to ask the last few questions that you have before we carry on, okay?
Okay, I have one more question.
Go for it.
All these inventors, let me just call them like that.
Yes.
Those who discovered the different programmings and all that. I know they face some serious challenges. I've not seen you mention it in your outline.
Oh, there are a lot of challenges that they
Maybe you could just share with us some few challenges which can help.
Very good. In that case, I'm going to give you a longer version of one of the stories that was for Amazon. I think Amazon has really faced a lot of challenges. And it's going to show you a video of him, how he started. You know, he also started in a garage, just like the other guys. So let's get to that. Like I said, you have a copy of all these files, and you should be able to, you know, click on the links yourself and also get to it. So this is a 15-minute video. I'll probably stop it halfway through, but just listen to how it's gonna start with the commercial. So pretty much Amazon, Jeff Bezos, him and his wife started a business, right? Or his ex-wife. Now he's divorced, and his ex-wife is the most powerful woman in the whole world. She has more money than any woman in this world. And her goal was that she was going to give away half of the money. She has been giving away the money, and the money keep piling. Okay, anybody that has an association that reaches out to her, she gives them money, and she manages it directly. She doesn't get anybody else involved, because when you get people involved, that's when things start happening. So as you see, this is Jeff Bezos in 1997. So let's get started.
Jeff Bezos. And what is your claim to fame? I'm the founder of Amazon.com. Amazon. Most of you know it as the online marketplace where you can buy anything from 6-foot-tall, 150-pound Bigfoot statues to Nicolas Cage pillowcases. Yeah, Amazon sells pretty much everything. In fact, they currently have a selection of over 100 million different products to choose from, and they also shipped about 5 billion items last year alone. That accounts for nearly 40% of everything sold on the internet. But even though Amazon is known by consumers as a company that makes money by selling products online, that actually isn't how Amazon makes money. In fact, Amazon loses money on nearly every single purchase that is made through their website. So how did Amazon make its money?
So that's the first one right there. Every single purchase that is made on their website, they're losing money. So how did they overcome that challenge? Let's hear.
How is it profitable, and how did they become the mammoth of an e-commerce company like they are today? Well, it actually started off with fairly modest beginnings.
So that's Jeff Bezos in his garage working, just starting Amazon.com.
This is the story of Amazon. Let's take you all the way back to the 1990s when the top fads were Beanie Babies, Tamagotchis, and yes, the internet.
Allison, can you explain what internet is?
It's a giant computer network.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell us what this was.
It's like a computer billboards.
It is true that when I was a kid, the information superhighway, as we called it, was an unknown but growing sector of the economy.
So you must have heard that sound if you were in the 90s and you were using the internet. That's how the internet used to boot up. It was a very annoying sound. Everything was slow, but Jeff Bezos did have a belief. He knew that things were going to get better. It was time for him to go ahead and bet in. Just like how everybody is thinking, for bush, for bush. Bush falling might not be anything new. There might be other opportunities out there that are old. If you don't buy in early, if you wait for others to get in there, in every business model, you're either the first, the best, the cheapest, the fastest. Otherwise, you're just going to be like anyone else. So Jeff Bezos had a belief he was not going to let anybody overcome him, and then he worked hard.
Actually, the term growing may be a little bit of an understatement in this case, because the growth of e-commerce in 1994 was nearly 2,300%. A young Wall Street executive named Jeff Bezos had been paying attention to the growth of the internet and decided to leave his Wall Street firm in order to start an e-commerce company. He did this because he had something which he called a regret minimization framework, which meant that he...
And I really, really like this part. Regret minimization framework. Anything that you have to do today, think about it. Will you regret not doing this? If you're going to regret not doing it, go ahead and just do it. If you're not going to regret that decision, then don't bother. Keep the decision. And that's the only reason why Amazon, Jeff Bezos decided, I'm going to regret if I don't open my Amazon company right now. He went ahead and did it.
He never wanted to wake up one day when he was 70 years old and regret not trying to start a business with a massive growth opportunity like the internet. So Mr. Bezos packed up, moved to Seattle, and began to work on a business plan for his new e-commerce company, which he called Cadabra Inc. Not what you were expecting, I'm guessing. He then went to legally incorporate the company, Cadabra Inc., except that his lawyer misheard the company name and incorporated it as Cadaver Inc., which was a little bit too dark for Bezos's liking, so he came up with another name, Relentless. Again, I'm guessing that's not what you were expecting. Bezos purchased Relentless.com in September of 1994, but after his friends told him that it sounded too sinister, he ended up settling on Amazon.com. One little side note or fun fact here is that if you were to type in Relentless.com into your address bar or into Google, you'll find that it redirects you to Amazon.com. So the next thing Bezos did was he created a list of 20 categories of products that could be sold on his website. And he specifically wanted a wide variety of products to exist.
So these were the things that were being sold on Amazon website. Now you have a lot.
Within each one of those categories. He then narrowed it down to 5 categories. They were compact discs, computer hardware, computer software, videos, and books.
So there you go. Those 5 things: computer hardware, computer software, videos, compact disc, and books. Finally,
eventually he decided to focus in on books due to the high demand of books, the large amounts of titles available, and the low price point. Within 2 months of launching Amazon.com, the company had sold books in 45 countries and was making over $80,000 per month. Little did they know that within 25 years, Amazon would soon be making $80,000 every 14 seconds.
So think about it. In a month, they make what? $80,000. Now they make it every 14 seconds. That means, 14 seconds, there's like 14 seconds in a minute. So they make 5 times that in a minute. There's about 60 minutes in an hour. And there's about 24 hours in a day. You can imagine how much money he makes in a day. Okay, let's carry on.
Revenue for Amazon continued to grow over the next couple of years, so they decided to go public in 1996, and they were listed on the NASDAQ. Amazon stock IPO'd at the equivalent of $1.50 price per share. And when you look at Amazon stock price today, which is a cool $1,500, you can do the math and calculate that if you invested $10,000 in Amazon's IPO in 1996, it would be worth roughly $10 million today. However, Amazon would hit a few rough patches over the next few years. Barnes & Noble sued.
So I want you to pay good attention to this, because Jeff Bezos has been to court many times. Okay, and these are the parts that are going to talk about some of the difficulties he went through.
Amazon in 1997, alleging that Amazon's claim to be the world's largest bookstore was false because it isn't a bookstore at all, it's a book broker. The suit was settled out of court, and Amazon continued to call itself the world's largest bookstore. Amazon was then sued again by Walmart in 1998, alleging that Amazon stole some of Walmart's secrets by hiring former Walmart executives. The suit was also settled out of court. Despite these lawsuits, Amazon continued to grow at a tremendous rate by mainly selling books. But selling just books was not good enough for Jeff Bezos. So later in 1998, the company made a big decision to expand beyond books and started selling a little bit of everything. This was the first step that Amazon took towards becoming the everything store. The decision to start selling everything made Amazon's revenue jump to nearly $1 billion, cementing itself as one of the giants of the e-commerce industry. Investors soon became very fond of Amazon and its upside potential, which made Amazon's stock price reach $113 per share in 1999, and indirectly making Jeff Bezos a billionaire and Time's Person of the Year. It very much seemed like nothing could go wrong for Amazon. However, Amazon was amongst many other tech companies that seemed to be going through a golden age of tech sector investing within the stock market. But this was the exact opposite of a golden age. At the time, investors thought investing in new tech startups with zero profit and very little revenue was a fantastic idea. In fact, most investors didn't even know much about what they were investing in. They just heard about the crazy returns that these tech investments were getting, so they just decided to go with the flow and gamble with their money without knowing much about how they were getting their returns. Luckily today, we don't have anything like that out there, so
okay, I hope you guys understand what's going on here. Be careful where you invest. That's why you have Bitcoin sitting out there just like that, because that's what people did in the past. Now let's find out what happened when they did that.
Don't worry about this. This senseless investing in the late 90s from Wall Street caused a massive tech bubble or dot-com bubble in the stock market. For proof of how crazy some of these tech investments were, here are some companies that were valued at near or over $1 billion at the time with little to no revenue. Broadcast.com, GeoCities, TheGlobe.com, Healthion, Inktomi, Actua, VerticalNet, ThinkTools, InfoSeek, Global Crossing, Commerce One, and there are actually tons of other ones, but covering all of the billion-dollar tech companies that went bust during the tech bubble would take all day. So
all of those names, none of us really know about them. That's because they were valued to be very high. People put their money in there. Before you know it, they are gone. There's nothing like that that exists anymore. It didn't work. So be very careful as you're going out buying Bitcoins and so on.
How does this relate to Amazon? Well, after investors came to their senses and realized that companies that don't have a product yet shouldn't be worth $2 billion, they decided to pull their money out of the overvalued tech sector. This caused Amazon's stock price to fall from $113 at its high to $5.51 at its low. That's a 95% drop. This may not seem like it should mean much to a company because the stock price has very little to do with the day-to-day operations of a company, even dramatic swings like that. But it does certainly affect a company's access to capital and financing, which are usually vital for startup tech companies like Amazon. Needless to say, most young tech companies did not survive the tech bubble bursting. However, eBay, Priceline, SanDisk, Shutterfly, and Amazon were some of the few that managed to make it out alive. Over the next few years, Amazon would start making very modest profits, nothing too special, but they weren't growing as fast and they became somewhat stagnant as a company. So they had to try something else. In 2005, they thought, what if we offered free 2-day shipping within the United States on select products? They called this Amazon Prime. However, this was the second most important move that Amazon would make in 2005, but we will come back to that in a second. The move to give free 2-day shipping on a lot of products would actually make the company lose money on every single product that was shipped due to the increased cost of this fast shipping. And to this day in 2018, Amazon still loses money on every single product that is sold on their website. So how does Amazon make a profit?
Okay.
You can sell this
So while the commercial is going on, I think by now you've already gotten a handful of difficulties that Amazon went through. Don't you think so? You might.
Yes, yes, I do.
Awesome. So I'll send you a copy of this link so you can continue watching it. And it's going to tell you a lot more about the story. But some of the things that happened when Amazon started, in 1994, again, they were not selling a lot of books. Every single time that a book was sold, they'll ring a bell. They had a bell in the office that they'll ring. Everybody will gather around. They're going to check out who bought the book and see if anybody knows them. But then by the time it was 2000, by the time it was a couple years old, they were ringing the bell so often that they had to throw away that bell. But that's how things happen. Now you're trying to make ends meet. Now you're trying to succeed in your life or in your career. Nobody cares about you, but there'll be times that you'll be overwhelmed. You probably not want to have a phone anymore because everybody will be calling you every minute. But now nobody cares about your phone number. So those are all things in life that happen. You have to start real small, maintain the course. You're going to get beat up. Just keep waking up. No matter the case, keep your eye on the price and always focus on your goal. Sounds good? So I know we've talked a lot about those, but there's a saying that is going around that there's going to be a new FAMGA. Like we said, FAMGA stands for, where is it? Facebook.
Facebook, Amazon, Apple, yeah.
Yep, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Apple. Because Facebook is in 5th position. Right here. I don't know if that's it, right. Of course, now you're gonna give me a pop-up. Okay, so there you go. You got Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Apple. But the new ones that are probably going to be taking over in the years that we haven't listed yet, here they are. They are known as SUS. There's Salesforce, Etsy, Uber, Spotify, and Square. If you haven't heard about them, it would be a good idea this week to try to find out what these are about. Spotify is a music industry, music company. Recently, they just passed Apple Music on the number of records that they're selling on Spotify. That is a major milestone because nobody has ever come close to Apple Music. Now they're beating Apple Music. All they need to do is acquire a few things here and there, set up shop correctly. They'll be good to go. Square, if you look at credit cards, every payment that's going on right now, you would see Square in there. So let me go ahead and add an example of one. See if I can find it. Come on, come on, come on, come on. And there you go. So if you look at payments now online or even in different stores, you're going to see Square right there with Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover. They're going to be going hot too very soon. There's Uber. We all know what Uber does, driving. They're also in Uber Eats and so on. Especially with the pandemic, that was a good venture. Etsy, very similar to Amazon, but you create your own art stuff and then you sell it online. Salesforce has to do with technology. They are also acquiring a lot of different new organizations that will make them prosper. So most people are on the lookout for those companies to see where they're going to come in 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, and so on. All right, what other questions do you have? So I believe we've covered everything, right? We've been able to talk about the differences between IS, IT, and CS, define them each. We talked about FANG, which was Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google. Now Netflix is no longer in there. Microsoft is in there. But because of the new name, it's called MAMA. M for Metaverse, that's Google, that's Facebook. A for Apple, M for Microsoft, A for Alphabet, and A for Amazon. And the SUS, that's for Spotify, Etsy, Uber, Square, and Salesforce. And we're able to summarize the history of FAMGA. And any questions you have? I know we've gone way over our time today, but if you have questions, just make sure you unmute before you ask your questions because everyone is on mute.
Non, vous n'êtes pas déconnecté. Joe est encore connecté.
All right, so let's talk about the schedule before we leave for the day. Today was our introduction on FAMGA. Next Saturday, I'm going to be expecting you to come with questions. I will be talking less and letting you talk more. We'll try to figure out what career paths are out there. So if you have one that you have in your sights or you want clarification on one, based on that, we are going to be able to fill these 3 spots at the end. So come in with questions and I'll do my best to answer them to the best of our ability. Then I'll also explain to you the approach that we're going to be taking while we're going to cover all these new topics, okay? So come prepared. We're going to always start on time and try to keep it less than 2 hours. If it's 1 hour, that would be great. But I know I want to give enough time.
Non, Francis, je venais de déposer.
Sounds
Ça va
good.
partir pour demain. Il va réceptionner.
Yeah, it sounds good.
All right, final call for questions. Since we are, let's see how much time we have. It's currently 1:41 p.m. my time, so no questions. All right, if we have no questions, then we are going to call it a day again.
Is Junior trying to talk? I heard his voice. He unmuted and was like talking.
Okay, so please, can you speak louder? Let's hear your question.
Okay, he's not talking. He muted. Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much for saving your, time of the day. And I will be, if you're interested, you can send me your email address. I'm going to add you to that classroom so that you can have a copy of all the record, everything that we used today. Sounds good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, Mr. Zoom.
Okay, how do we send the email?
You can use my phone number, which is on the flyer, any of the phone numbers.
Flyer.
Yes. So just send a message with your email address and ask to be added to Google Classroom. And if you need me to go through the process, I can go ahead and send you a quick short video how to do it.
Okay.
Well, that's good.
All right. Well, have a wonderful day, and I wish you a very, very enjoyable weekend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To you. The pleasure is ours.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Anytime.
It was a good start.
Yes, sir.